Welcome back, guys. I have a really cool video for you today. We are going to talk about coffee careers and careers in coffee. My name is Emilee Bryant. I am a coffee educator out in New York City. I also teach coffee online. So if you're new here, nice to meet you. Also, if you're new here, we often refer to each other as dirty scumbags. It is a term of endearment. We have a little bit of fun on this channel. We don't take life or coffee too seriously. But I wanted to take this time today to share with you guys some of my top thoughts when it comes to getting a career in coffee. I want to talk about how to get your career a little bit further, maybe how to just get the coffee job in the first place, or maybe if you want something a little bigger picture, how to start conceptualizing for that. Now, there's 1,000,000,001 scenarios in the coffee world. There's no way I can physically answer everyone's question and get everyone a job in one video. But what I can do is offer some advice and give you some tips and places to look. That way you can start to make moves and segue into your coffee career. The first place we should start is establishing what you want to do in coffee. There are so many avenues in coffee that you can take. You can be a barista, you can be a green buyer, a roaster, heck, you can be an owner, you could be a fermentation specialist like one of my favorite podcasters, Lucia Solis. Side note, if you're not listening to Lucia Solis's podcast, Making Coffee, you're doing something wrong. She's really cool. She's a fermentation consultant for farms, and she makes a really great podcast called Making Coffee, and she dives pretty deep into all those concepts. I know I got off topic, but definitely check it out. It's called Making Coffee. You can be anything in coffee, really, truly, but the thing that you have to do is establish that. Even from the beginning, even before you get a barista job, if that's where you are right now, where do you want to go? And also, what are you willing to do to get there? Do you want to get your Q grading license? Do you want to run a shop? And if you want to run a shop, are you ready for the gray hairs and all the investment and wakeless hours whenever you're being called in the middle of the night saying, I can't come in tomorrow? Are you ready for that? You have to consider those things. You have to have empathy for what those roles are going to be like for you. They're going to be hard. If you want a job in coffee that isn't working the counter, then you need to identify what that is and chase that goal. Put things in front of you that are similar to that. Do you want to be a roaster? Do you work for a roaster? Maybe consider asking them if you can go cupping with them. I made that sound like they're going to go golfing. Really, you would do cupping at the roastery, but maybe you want to go golfing. I don't know where I'm going with that. And don't be shy. Definitely poke around. Get the info you deserve. I think if you're a good employee and you want to learn more about the craft that you love, that most people would probably help you with that. Once you've established what it is you want to do, now we have to get the job. And for a lot of jobs, you do have to start off at a base level. Like if you're trying to be the manager of a coffee shop or you're trying to be a roaster, it might be in your best interest to get a coffee job somewhere, like a barista job. Let's talk about how to find a job. And I know you're going to be like, Emilee, there's no specialty coffee jobs around me. If there's really no specialty coffee jobs around you, then you need to move to where the jobs are. And not only that, you need to apply to as many of them as possible and make sure that you are practicing your resume and your interview skills. I'm starting to sound like your school counselor. Have a friend interview with you, or better yet, have a friend's friend practice interviewing with you, because they're not going to be as nice as your friend will, and they might grill you. If there's nothing on your resume, don't freak out. That's okay. From what I've seen in my experience is that when people are trying to get a coffee job, they think, oh, I don't have enough experience to get that specialty job. And then they get all nervous, they get imposter syndrome, and they don't get the job because they have a terrible interview, or maybe they don't apply to begin with. I know a lot of places that only hire new baristas. And the reason they do that is so that there's not any bad habits they have to work out of the barista. They can teach you from the start. Almost all the techs that I know were not techs prior to becoming technicians. They got that job and then they learned on the job. The same thing can happen for you in many scenarios. What's more important in an interview is that you're a good person and you're a good candidate. Can you handle rejection? Can you pitch a sale? Are you charismatic enough to be in sales? And if you're not, well, maybe take a charisma class. Like whatever you want to do, you have to position yourself to be able to do that. Everyone you've met in coffee had to start somewhere, and it's okay to start at places like Starbucks, especially if you're trying to get your foot into the door. Do keep in mind that some places kind of judge Starbucks in a pretentious way. They say, oh, you worked at Starbucks. Well, maybe you're not that good, but that's not true. You probably are pretty good. There's probably a lot that you learned. Just know that Starbucks, being the fast food of coffee, has some differences in specialty coffee. But it doesn't mean you can't get your foot in the door, and it's very powerful for that. Apparently the health insurance is pretty good too. Apply everywhere and check online all the time. Sometimes different coffee companies, for instance, Intelligentsia, Counterculture, they won't post their jobs just online. They'll post it on their website in the jobs category. So it's really helpful if you go on Google and you look up a company you'd really like to work for and you look up that company's name and careers or jobs. I know a lot of people that went ahead and applied to a job even though they had no experience, but they had passion for the thing that they wanted. For instance, I had one friend who got into brewing beer. He did it in his backyard one summer, and he got really, really into it. And then he decided to apply to a brewery out in Arizona. Not only did he go out there, interview, and get the job, but it happened the same week that the manager of that brewery quit. And so this person got promoted as the manager of that job. And then they got to move to Arizona and work near the Grand Canyon. Is the Grand Canyon in Arizona or New Mexico? Anyway, it was near the Grand Canyon and it was cool. That person did not have experience. That person had a hobby that turned into a career. I'm not saying that's gonna work for you every time, but I am saying that sometimes in the interview, it's you that sells yourself, not the skills. A little tip on something that you should never do in an interview is send them your latte art. Do not do this unless they have specifically requested that you post your latte art to them or they're looking for a latte art barista. Don't show your latte art. It seems pretentious. And also latte art is the garnish of coffee. That's like a chef being like, look at how I plated this sandwich. You know what I'm saying. It doesn't mean anything. It's surface level and it's superficial. In the area that you live, make sure to go to the coffee shops that are around you. Ask the baristas, do you like working here? That can tell you a lot. Go ahead and interview with people when the job's open. And if you don't get a job, that's okay because you got to practice interview. The better you're going to get at interviews, the more likely you're going to get the job you want. Let's say you're gunning for a bigger job. Well, there's no shame in taking something small that's temporary to get somewhere bigger. I think my biggest piece of advice for finding big gigs like education jobs is just keep an eye out for them. Like really put that in your search bar. So go online and type what you want. Go and get yourself a LinkedIn. Go ahead and go on Indeed or monster.com. Those typically don't have great suggestions for coffee careers, but they can sometimes. Or if you're in New York City, you can go to newyorkcoffeejobs.com. It's a really incredible site that lists a bunch of coffee jobs all the time. I've seen some really cool gigs on that site, anywhere from $15 an hour to $100K a year. So really, the sky's the limit for what you can get. You just have to look for it. If there's a local cafe you want to work with that's in your area, maybe put their Instagram on notification. That way when they post, you're the first person to see it. Say one day they post, hey, we're looking for somebody. You're the first person to put your name in. For example, on New York Coffee Jobs, I have that listed in my email so that every time they post, I get a notification. The next best thing that you can do for your coffee career is asking for help. Most people in coffee are very willing to help you. It is a pretty friendly community for the most part. Want to get deeper in your coffee community? Well, ask around at coffee shops. Hey, are there ever any public cuppings or any kind of coffee events or throwdowns? Ask for that connect and then show up. Or reach out to a friend who's really into coffee or works at a coffee shop and be like, hey, I've been practicing my pour overs. I would love to make you a pour over sometime. What are your thoughts on that? Or hey, you're a roaster. I'm trying to learn about roasting. Do you know anywhere I can get into a roasting apprenticeship? Or could I come shadow you for a day? I'd even pay you. Truly. It's pretty powerful what you can do. I'll show you. Hey.
What a delight.
Oh, my friend, it's so good to talk to you.
Always a pleasure, champion. How are you?
I am good. I have a question for you. I have a friend who's moving to New York City in like 3 weeks. Do you know any inbound jobs, like anything that might be hiring right now?
Everybody's hiring, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean? So it really matters where this individual wants to work. And I'm telling them to walk in there and say, hey, I want to work here. If they're in Queens, I can recommend to, Queens cafes, Coffee Project's always hiring. Sweet Leaf is always hiring.
Those are great recommendations.
White Noise is always hiring.
White Noise, yeah.
They have a new shop in the city that I know they're short staffed.
This is incredible. That's pretty much all I got for you today, Hav.
That's it, Em. That's it.
What's
up with this underground?
No.
Secret throwdown.
Oh, that. We can't talk about that over the phone. No, talk to you later, ma'am. See exactly what I'm talking about? He was willing to help. He didn't know like a place that was like on hand, like here's your job, but saying the same thing that I did, go into the cafe, show yourself, ask for the job, and also gave a bunch of awesome recommendations. Another way that you can get your career off the ground is by competing in coffee, going to competitions. Now, competitions aren't the most ethical thing in the world. We kind of glorify people. We put them on a pedestal when they win competitions. And I personally don't think we should do that in coffee, but it's what we do. It's where we are right now. And there is no better way to be noticed than to quite literally step into the spotlight. I mean, I'm a competitor and I'm also a content creator. Would you have known about me if I did not make this video? Maybe not. So really, like, putting yourself out there, competing or showing yourself off is a great way to move yourself forward in the coffee world. It's the most visible way to move yourself forward in the coffee world. But you don't have to compete to make competition a really big part of your career trajectory. Going to competition is super important if you want to be in coffee. If you want to forward your career, you got to go to these networking events. Networking events are really powerful, I think, in all industries, but in coffee, they're super fun because we have competitions and we have these big expos where you can see all the newest things and you can share the love of coffee with thousands of people that also share the love of coffee, and they're handing you out business cards, you're handing them your information. Truly, if you want to be seen, you want to move forward, go to a competition. And I know what you're thinking, competition is so expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give you is to volunteer. If a booth needs a volunteer, you can very likely get paid for that time, or you might even get your ticket covered, or both. I've had both covered in the past. I've gotten free flights out to events like that just because I was going to help them out. You can reach out to a brand that you know is going to be there, and you can say, hey, I'm going to be there. I would love a shift at your booth. What are you paying, and would you be willing to accept me? You can get paid to do this. Or you can volunteer with something like the SCA directly, and you can be a judge in a competition, or you can be a tech judge, or you can just help set up. All of those things are invaluable to your career. They really will lift you. The amount of insight and advice and just skill that you can learn from that is next level. I was judging Brewers Cup this last year. I will never taste coffee the same way. I got to try beautiful coffees, watch people have these amazing performances, and it was so much fun. And I learned so much while I was there. And I met people and I networked. Very good for my coffee career. Some of the people that I've connected with throughout my career have been at Expo. If you're a competitor, then you know this very well because you are always going to Expo because that's where the competitions are. But it's a great way to get your foot in the door, get your face in front of everybody, meet everybody, and have a great time doing it. Also, drinking tons of delicious coffee and a little bit of bad coffee too. But that's just the nature of Expo. The next thing that can help you with your coffee career is researching your craft. And I mean like digging in. It's only going to do you a service to know what you're talking about. Like, let's say you do become successful and then you're in coffee, but you don't know what you're talking about. And now everyone's looking at you for answers. Well, that's just terrible and very embarrassing. You live in the golden age of coffee information. There are tons of people just literally on Instagram and on Patreon creating amazing works of content. There's Jonathan Gagne, for example, or Lucia Solis, like I mentioned earlier. Both of those people create incredible content. I've learned so much from both of them collectively that it's almost absurd. Don't be afraid to go and get some coffee research books. Don't be afraid to fall into rabbit holes. Though I don't always recommend ethically Barista Hustle. They have an incredible learning catalog. I do recommend that you go through their catalog and read all the research that they've done over the years. And there's a bunch more people out there that are awesome researchers. I can't list them all, but I will list a few down below in the description. This also goes back to asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask people questions. Coffee people love to talk, if you haven't noticed from me already, but ask questions, be curious, dig, poke your nose into things, show up to places, like do those things, know what you want and take it. There's also nothing wrong with kind of faking it until you make it. I'm faking right now. I'm barefoot, completely barefoot. And I bet you thought I was wearing shoes. No, go back and look at all my videos. I very rarely wear shoes when I pour. Another piece of advice that I could give you is never stop learning, and don't stop practicing either. Just like any muscle in your body, when you don't use it, it atrophies. Brew coffee, brew it all the time. Take coffee home with you. But with that being said, do not burn out. Do not make coffee your life. Do not make it your hobby and your work. I'm very guilty of that. I'm a coffee educator in my day-to-day, my 9 to 5. I go in and I teach people how to make coffee taste really good for specific accounts. And then I come after work and I shoot videos for you guys and teach you about coffee. And I brew coffee in the morning and sometimes late at night. Like, I don't have that disconnect from my career and my hobby. So I'm oversaturated. I'm over extracted. in my career. Don't be like me. I'm a bad influence. Find balance in your life. Bring the coffee home, but don't let it be your life. The last thing I want to mention is that a cafe is not your home. They are not your family. They are not your parents. They are your bosses. And you need to remember that. And you always need to advocate for yourself. I'm not saying go out there and protest against your boss in front of their face if they don't give you a raise. But if someone's treating you wrong, you need to get out of there. Anecdotally, I have a lot of experience in this. A lot of the coffee career that I came into being was pretty negative. I was kind of bullied in some sectors of my coffee career. And it got to the point where at a certain point, I had to walk away. I had to go find the place I wanted to work because the place that I was working was toxic. Make sure you advocate for yourself and don't get stuck somewhere, because it's not worth it to sit there and be disrespected and waste my time on people who do not care about your well-being. Don't get a coffee job just because it's the only coffee job. If that's true, if you have only one coffee option, then I would say move somewhere else. And lastly, so I don't forget, enjoy the ride. Enjoy your coffee career. It can be really fun. The people are really nice, and you can really give back to the world. Remember to always remember the farmer, the places of origin, where coffee comes from. It is a crop that has been taken from people, and we need to remember that. We need to remember where it comes from. Coffee's not just here to give us a career. We're here to make coffee better if we can. And so I'd like to encourage you to always remember where it comes from and leave coffee better than you found it. That's all I have for you today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, if anything that I said was wrong and you have a correction, please let me know below. If you want to subscribe to our channel, that's super appreciated. If you want to help the channel grow, please consider a Patreon below. I know I hate to ask, but maybe a super thanks if you want to tip us for the video. And by us, I mean me, because I do this all alone in my house. And lastly, thank you. I love you. Always a pleasure. You get so many kisses. This is getting weird. I'm going to cut the video off right